things do go bump in the night. It was the summer of 1968. I remember it like yesterday. So much was happening that year. I could list all the events and their dates thanks to my detailed personal diary. Inspired by reading The Diary of Anne Frank in 8th grade, I began keeping a diary, a Christmas gift. It was white leather with gold trim, with the word diary written right there on top in gold cursive on the front, and a gold clasp lock, and tiny little keys. Many young people kept diaries at that time, but today we use journals or electronic records, but they don't hold those same deeply personal secrets like a locked diary. The events of the summer of 1968 were recorded in our diaries, mine and Emily's. This story shares my experience with the girls and the unforgettable events of that summer. Now, Emily was curious and easily influenced. Her best friend, Samantha, was curious yet cautious and skeptical, preferring to review all angles before deciding. And Lacey, our straight A student, was outgoing and adventurous. And Madison was quiet and reserved until you got to know her, and hesitant about trying new things like pineapple pizza. And then, of course, there was me, Marie, trying to keep everyone on track. But I didn't have a best friend. I had the best of friends. Now, this story unfolds just as Emily and her family moved into her grandmother's house during Easter break, following her grandmother's passing in March of 1968. Her grandfather, a former pastor, had died under mysterious circumstances the previous December. Older homes, have their fascinations and mysteries, and Emily, being curious, explored every nook and cranny. Now, on Friday, April 12th, a little over a month before the end of the school year, Emily invited me to visit her new house. I remember the living room had an oversized mantel with a cross hanging above it, likely placed there by Emily's grandfather. Emily wasted no time and led me straight up to her bedroom on the second floor. Mrs. Robinson by Simon and Garfunkel played in the background. A lava lamp on the bedside table swirled vibrant colors of red, orange, and yellow. Emily quickly opened a paisley-lined jewelry box full of costume jewelry that had been her grandmother's. She took 2 pairs of earrings out and offered me a pair with polka dots, which today are my favorite. And we each tucked our hair behind our ears to put on the earrings and walked over to the mirror hanging on the back of the closet door just to see how glamorous we looked. A face appeared in the mirror behind us, and instantly we stopped short and looked at each other as if to say, "Did you see that?" We quickly removed our earrings and returned them to her grandmother's jewelry box. Thinking our imagination had gotten the best of us, we distracted ourselves, listening to music and talking about boys. And as young girls, we quickly shrugged the experience off, and Emily excitedly wanted to show me the attic. The attic door evoked a foreboding feeling, the kind you get when you watch a scary show like The Twilight Zone or the movie Psycho, which we did at the local drive-in theater where age wasn't a factor when you pretended to be asleep in the car. And only in one's imagination can an attic come alive and take on a life of its own. Attics are often the backdrop of spooky tales with unrecognizable sounds and things that go bump in the night. A funky smell assaulted our nostrils as Emily opened the creaky attic door. It was dark until we turned on the light to see that everything was covered with a thick dust, like no one had been in there for quite a long time. There were boxes of old clothes and pieces of broken furniture just strewn around. In the far corner was a bassinet covered with a baby's quilt. I quickly learned that Emily had been tasked with taking inventory of the book collections that spilled out from the bookshelf that lined the back wall of the attic. Now, as a pastor, Emily's grandfather had read and collected many books on various topics. She handed me a book titled The Ouija Board, Doorway to the Occult by Edmund Gruce. The title freaked me out, and I immediately rejected it. Why would a pastor have such books? I assumed it was for research, perhaps to answer a parishioner's inquiry about Ouija boards. Seeing my concern, Emily flipped the book to the back cover, revealing it was written from a Christian perspective and published by a Presbyterian company. We both thought, no harm, no foul. Emily opened the book and read aloud the first chapter she found, Psychic Development and the Danger of Entrapment, before returning it to the wobbly bookshelf. Emily then found a Phillips cassette recorder and several blank tapes in one of the boxes. To our surprise, there was already a tape inside. She pressed play, and we clearly heard one word, demon. Without a word, we both ran out of the attic, and Emily, clutching the recorder to her chest, ran straight back down to her bedroom. It was getting late, and I was a little freaked out, so I said my goodbyes and left as Emily wrote in her diary. She shared parts of her diary with me and wrote in it every single night in detail. Now, based on her diary, Emily returned to the attic that evening to search for a Ouija board. She eventually found The Ouija Board, Mystifying Oracle Game by Parker Brothers. Inside the box were printed instructions. She took the game and hid the box under the blanket in the bassinet. Over the next few weeks, we were busy preparing for our last sock hop, 8th grade graduation, and the upcoming summer break before high school. And on May 31st, I saw Samantha at the Inskip pool and shared my experience in Emily's creepy attic. Samantha seemed a bit concerned, but didn't dwell on it. That evening, Emily returned to the attic and retrieved the Ouija board. She lit some candles, placed her fingers on the planchette, and pressed record on the tape recorder. With her heart pounding, she whispered, "Is anyone here with me?" The candles flickered. The planchette remained still, and Emily exhaled a breath she didn't realize she was holding. She was about to put everything away, thinking it was just a party game, when the planchette jerked violently to yes. Emily grasped. She knew she hadn't pushed it. The candles flickered again, the flame shrinking as if struggling for air. The shadows in the room stretched, growing darker and more defined. Emily asked, "Who are you?" Her voice trembled. The planchette moved slowly this time, almost deliberately, spelling out a name she didn't recognize. M-A-R-Y. Emily's pulse quickened. She had no idea who Mary was. But before she could ask another question, the planchette moves on its own to goodbye. That night, with her transistor radio playing in the background, she had her first paranormal experience. Seeing lights dancing on the walls and feeling the room temperature drop, prompting her to pull the covers over her head. On June 1st, Samantha visited Emily and recalled their journey to the attic, where she remembered Emily saying they're about to have an encounter with spirits. Samantha later shared that Emily began patting the board as if it were a pet to reassure her, it's just a game. Emily used her brother's Boy Scout lantern as their source of light. She closed the attic curtains and positioned the Ouija board and the cassette recorder in the middle of the floor. Later on, Samantha would describe in a slightly mocking manner that Emily explained the board like a school teacher, pointing out every feature of the board. She remembered Emily pushing record on the tape recorder to record the questions asked, and Emily would read the responses from the board out loud to capture them. Emily placed her fingers on the planchette, and Samantha reluctantly followed along. Emily asked a simple question first. "Is anyone here?" As the planchette slowly moved toward yes, Emily continued. "What is your name?" The planchette began to move from letter to letter, spelling out M-A-R-Y. Next, Emily asked, "Can you see me?" As the planchette moved to yes, Emily spoke. The planchette said yes. Emily didn't tell Samantha that she had talked with Mary before. Emily and Samantha looked at each other and agreed this session was over. And later that night, after Samantha had gone home, Emily dimmed the lights in her bedroom and pulled out the board again. Sitting on her bed, she lightly placed her fingers on the planchette, which instantly spelled out HEISCOMING. The lava lamp flickered as it had a short, then went dark, the only light coming from the small gap between the curtains. The temperature in the room dropped, and Emily began to tremble, her breath visible in the cold air. She stopped playing the game as fear had become a reality. Looking back, I'm pretty sure none of us knew then you should never use the Ouija board alone. On Monday, June 3rd, I walked to the library to research the Ouija board and saw that Samantha was already at work in the card catalog. Great minds think alike, and I guess we both thought that we should do some research on Ouija boards. We found that the Ouija board is also called the spirit board, talking board, or witch board. We found mixed beliefs about the safety of using the board. Some authors called the board paranormal, while others disclaimed it as pseudoscience. Christians warned of it being satanic and leading to demonic possession, while psychologists were concerned about heightened anxiety and paranoia. We found rules for use, like always saying goodbye, and never playing alone, and never playing in a graveyard. We decided we need to tell Emily. But when? That same Monday evening, Emily wrote in her diary, I'm using the excuse of taking inventory of the books in the attic to use the Ouija board to communicate with Mary. I asked how she died, and the pointer spelled out DRONING. Tuesday, June 4th, Emily wrote, no one is home tonight, so I'm going to talk to Mary. I asked, do you want to play a game? Immediately, a loud creak echoed from the attic. My hand shook as I moved the candle toward the sound, but I only saw shadows. The attic door slammed shut, and then a whisper in my ear and captured on the recorder. Leave now, I screamed. The attic door slammed shut, and the candle went out. In the dark, I bolted for the door. I struggled with the knob and finally ran to my brightly lit living room. I could not catch my breath. My heart was racing. I kept hearing creaks in the attic, and then I heard nothing. The house became silent. Yet, I don't think I'm alone here. Thursday, June 6th, Emily writes, when I try to sleep, I feel an electrical sensation like being shocked. As I pull the sheet up to my throat to snuggle into it, it was suddenly yanked down to my feet. I'm scared, and I don't know what I should do. Friday, June 7th, Emily writes, I have recurring nightmares, like I'm drowning, like Mary. I have this strange feeling that someone is watching me, and I've heard more voices calling my name. Sunday, June 9th. Tonight, I wrote in my diary, at tonight's slumber party at my house with the girls, before the lights went out, Emily pulled out that Ouija board from under her sleeping bag. Both Samantha and I knew what it was, but Madison and Lacey did not. Madison asked, what's that? Emily told her, it's a game. You ask this board questions and it responds by moving this pointer thing and it spells letters and then there's your answer. Madison asked, so where do these answers come from? Emily replied, oh, they come from just about anyone in the universe. Emily invited the girls to play. At first, Madison and Lacey were reluctant, but eventually they shrugged their shoulders and listened as Emily gave them instructions. After several questions, Madison asked, is there anything special going to happen to us this summer? The planchette moved slowly to the word, yes. And Lacey asked, when will it happen? The planchette moved more erratic in spelling out the letters J-U-L-Y. And then it moved to the number 1 and circled it. And then it moved to the number 7 and circled it. The planchette then moved to the word goodbye. I found this day interesting because it was my birthday. And I knew that I would be on vacation in Daytona Beach. And if something grand were to happen, I would not be here to witness it. And I regretted that we had not told Emily what we found out about the Ouija board, but with the other girls present, I thought it best that we just wait till we're all together. Throughout the summer, Emily became increasingly distant, withdrawn, and secretive, and rejected all invitations of getting together. From her diary, we later learned that the Ouija board had become Emily's obsession. She would sit in a half-darkened room every night, waiting for its messages. In her diary, Emily described how the responses were initially playful and comforting. At first, it had been a curiosity to amuse herself during these long, lonely summer nights. The planchette would glide smoothly under her fingers, spelling out words that made sense and answered her questions, fulfilling her need for connection. She would turn on the recorder and describe the scene in detail. Sitting cross-legged, her eyes fixed on the Ouija board, she would spend hours asking questions and getting answers. As the days went by, the board's tone began to change. The messages became more cryptic and sinister. The planchette moved with a force that no longer felt like a game, spelling out warnings, names she didn't recognize, and words she didn't understand. Emily couldn't stop. She was drawn to the board, compelled by an invisible force that felt familiar and comforting, yet utterly foreign. On the evening of July 17th, while celebrating my birthday at the beach, I remembered the board's predictions for July 17th. I wouldn't learn about the events of that night until I returned home. It turned out to be a life-changing experience, one for which there was no antidote to counteract the poison that Emily had consumed. On July 17th, the board asked her, Emily, to perform a ritual. Light 5 candles, it spelled out, and place them in a circle around you. She recorded this command along with the movements of the planchette. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement. She did as instructed. Feeling the air tingling around her, the planchette then moved slowly, deliberately, spelling out one final command. Offer your blood. We'll never know if Emily hesitated, but the compulsion was too strong. We can only imagine her reaching for the hidden ornate dagger. With shaking hands, she pressed the blade into her palm and watching a thin line of blood drip onto the board. Emily continued to engage as the planchette moved faster, spelling out unfamiliar words in an ancient, otherworldly language. Suddenly, the planchette stopped, and silence filled the room. The candle extinguished, plunging the attic into darkness. A coldness spread from where Emily's blood touched the board, seeping into her veins and freezing her from the inside out. She tried to scream, but no sound came, her voice stolen by the darkness she had summoned. Then she heard it, a whisper. Soft at first, growing louder and closer, when Emily asked, "Is that you, Mary?" The whisper surrounded her, inside and out, a voice, not her own, but now part of her. It spoke of pain, suffering, and a fate awaiting her beyond this world. Emily realized too late that she had opened a door she couldn't close, inviting in something she couldn't control. Through the tears, her vision blurred and her body grew cold. The last thing that she saw was the board. The letters rearranged themselves, spelling out a final word, mine. And with her last breath, the darkness consumed her, pulling her into an abyss from which there was no return. The room was left empty, save for the Ouija board, now silent and still, waiting for its next victim. Thank you.